Welcome, my friend. I am truly grateful that you are here tonight, no matter where this day has taken you, or what may still be resting on your heart. I hope that, for the next little while, you can simply be here. Have you ever noticed that life quietly changes the meaning of enough? When we are young, we believe happiness is waiting somewhere ahead. A little more money, a little more success, a little more certainty about tomorrow. We keep telling ourselves, just a little more, and then I will finally feel at peace. But the years pass. Many of the things we once dreamed of slowly become the life we are already living. And yet, on quiet evenings, when the world finally grows still, a gentle question sometimes rises from somewhere deep inside us. Why does my heart still feel as though something is missing? Perhaps that is why you are here tonight. If you are still awake, leave a little hello in the comments. Tell me what time it is where you are and where you are listening from tonight. Many years ago, hidden among the mist-covered mountains of Japan, there stood a small Zen temple that few people had ever seen. There were no grand gates, no golden statues, no treasures on display. Only the sound of the wind moving through the cedar trees, the quiet song of a distant stream, and an old monk who greeted every traveler in exactly the same way. He offered them a simple bowl of tea, nothing more, nothing less. People came to him carrying many different burdens. Some came searching for peace, some came searching for answers. Some came because they had spent a lifetime building successful lives, yet could not understand why their hearts still felt empty. They all believed the old monk possessed a priceless secret, but no one expected that secret to rest inside an ordinary, empty tea bowl. And on one cool autumn morning, a weary traveler named Thomas slowly climbed the final stone steps leading to the temple. He had carried one question in his heart for nearly his entire life. Before the sun set that evening, he would finally receive an answer, but it would not come in the way he expected. Thomas stopped at the weathered wooden gate. For a long moment, he did not move. The journey had taken him nearly 3 weeks, across crowded villages, through quiet forests, and over narrow mountain paths that seemed to disappear into the morning mist. His legs were tired. His shoulders ached beneath the weight of his small travel bag. But it was not the journey that had exhausted him. It was the question he had carried for almost an entire lifetime. The temple was even quieter than he had imagined. There was no sound except the soft rustling of cedar branches, the distant song of running water, and the gentle sweep, sweep, sweep of a bamboo broom brushing across old stone. An elderly monk was clearing the fallen maple leaves from the courtyard. His movements were slow, unhurried. Every stroke of the broom seemed to carry the same quiet attention, as though even the leaves deserved kindness before returning to the earth. Thomas stood there, watching. For reasons he could not explain, he found himself breathing a little more slowly. The old monk looked up. Their eyes met. He smiled. Not the smile of someone welcoming an important guest, nor the smile of someone surprised by a stranger. It was the gentle smile of a man who had been expecting this meeting, long before Thomas had begun climbing the mountain. Without saying a word, the monk set the broom against the temple wall, walked to a small stone table beneath an ancient maple tree, and poured 2 bowls of warm tea. Only then did he quietly say, "You must be tired." Thomas nodded. "I am." The monk gently pushed one of the bowls toward him. "Drink first. The mountain has already listened to your footsteps. There is no need to hurry your words." Thomas wrapped both hands around the warm bowl. For the first time in many months, he realized how cold they had become. Neither of them spoke. The silence between them felt strangely comfortable, not empty, not awkward, simply peaceful. After a long while, Thomas looked down into the tea. Then he asked the question that had brought him all this way. Master, I have spent my whole life trying to build a good life. I worked hard. I cared for my family. I earned more than I ever imagined I would. He paused. His voice grew quieter. And yet, I still wake up feeling as though something is missing. What is it? That I have failed to find? The old monk listened without interrupting. He did not answer immediately. Instead, he looked at the empty space beside Thomas's tea bowl and smiled. It is an old question, he said softly. In fact, it reminds me of another traveler, one who asked a very similar question more than 2,500 years ago. He was not looking for a Zen monk. He was looking for the Buddha. The old monk did not answer. Instead, he slowly lifted his tea bowl, took one quiet sip, and placed it gently back on the table. The sound of warm clay touching cool stone was almost too soft to hear. A breeze wandered through the maple branches above them. One golden leaf loosened from its stem and drifted slowly to the ground. Neither man spoke. Thomas waited. At first, the silence felt uncomfortable. His mind searched for an answer. Perhaps the monk had not understood. Perhaps he was choosing the right words. Or perhaps he simply did not wish to answer at all. Then something unexpected happened. The longer Thomas sat without speaking, the more he became aware of things he had not noticed before. The fragrance of fresh tea, the gentle rhythm of water flowing somewhere beyond the courtyard, the distant call of a mountain bird, the warmth of the bowl resting in his hands. It had been many years since he had noticed something as simple as the warmth of a tea bowl. His days had always been filled with schedules, meetings, deadlines, responsibilities. Even after retirement, his mind had never truly learned how to rest. The old monk smiled again. "Do you know," he asked quietly, "why so many people climb this mountain?" Thomas looked up. "They come searching for answers," the monk nodded. "That is what they believe," he paused. "But most of them have only forgotten how to listen." Thomas frowned slightly. "Listen to what?" The monk looked toward the forest, then back at Thomas. "To the place where the answer has been waiting all along." He gently touched the rim of the empty tea bowl. "It reminds me," he said softly, "of an old merchant who once traveled many days to ask the Blessed One almost the very same question." The monk lifted the empty tea bowl into both hands. For a few quiet moments, he simply looked at it, as though he were greeting an old friend. Then he began. More than 2,500 years ago, there lived a wealthy merchant. He owned fields that stretched farther than the eye could see. His warehouses were always full. His family never worried about tomorrow. Wherever he traveled, people greeted him with respect. The monk smiled softly. And yet, every night, before closing his eyes, he felt the same emptiness you have just described. Thomas listened without moving. The monk continued. One morning, the merchant heard that the Buddha was staying in a bamboo grove not far from his town. So he prepared many gifts: fine cloth, rare spices, gold, and enough food to feed hundreds of people. He believed if anyone could tell him how to quiet his restless heart, it would be the Buddha. The old monk paused. A gentle breeze carried another maple leaf across the courtyard. When the merchant finally arrived, he bowed deeply before the Blessed One. Then he asked, "Master, I have everything I once dreamed of. Why does happiness always seem to stay just beyond my reach? I keep thinking, if I gain a little more, then surely I will finally be content." The Buddha looked at him with great kindness. He did not answer immediately. Instead, he picked up an empty bowl that was resting beside him. He held it in his hands for a moment. then asked a very simple question. "When this bowl is empty, what do you see?" The merchant looked inside. "Nothing, blessed one," the Buddha smiled. "Look again." The merchant looked a second time. The bowl was still empty. He raised his head. "I still see nothing." The Buddha gently turned the bowl toward the morning sunlight. Light filled its smooth clay surface. The merchant suddenly noticed the blue sky reflected inside it, the branches of bamboo, the drifting clouds, even his own face. The Buddha said quietly, "An empty bowl is never truly empty. It always has room to receive. Only a bowl that believes it is already full can receive nothing more." The courtyard became silent once again. Thomas slowly lowered his eyes to the tea bowl resting in his own hands. For the first time, he was no longer looking at a bowl. He was wondering whether the Buddha had been speaking about the human heart all along. The old monk gently lifted his tea bowl. For a long moment, he said nothing. Thomas did not interrupt. The silence no longer felt uncomfortable. It felt as though the mountain itself was listening. Finally, the monk spoke. "Your question reminds me of a man who lived during the time of the Buddha. He was known throughout the land for his generosity. People admired him. They spoke of his kindness. They spoke of his wealth. But what made him truly remarkable was not what he owned. It was what he was willing to let go." Thomas listened carefully. The monk continued. "His name was Anathapindika. He was one of the Buddha's most devoted lay followers. When he first heard that the Buddha was teaching nearby, he traveled a great distance just to meet him. It is said that his heart was filled with such joy that he awoke before dawn, unable to wait for the morning. When he finally stood before the Blessed One, he did not ask how to become wealthier. He did not ask how to live longer. He asked only how a person could live a life that truly mattered." The monk looked toward the forest. The Buddha did not tell him to abandon his home. He did not tell him to throw away his wealth. Instead, he taught him how to hold it, without letting it possess his heart. A gentle breeze passed through the courtyard. The maple leaves whispered above them. The monk smiled. "Many people believe abundance is measured by what fills their hands." The Buddha showed something different. He showed that true abundance is measured by what remains, even after the hands are empty. Thomas lowered his eyes. Without thinking, he loosened his grip around the tea bowl. For the first time that morning, he noticed he had been holding it far too tightly. The monk saw the small movement, but he said nothing. Sometimes, a person begins to change long before they realize it themselves. Thomas remained silent. His eyes rested on the tea bowl. A few moments earlier, it had seemed like nothing more than an ordinary piece of clay. Now, he was no longer certain. The old monk slowly rose to his feet. Without saying another word, he picked up the bamboo broom and began sweeping the courtyard once again. Sweep, sweep, sweep. Thomas watched him for several minutes. Finally, unable to contain his curiosity, he asked, "Master, if the Buddha never asked people to abandon their wealth, then why do so many believe they must choose between a successful life and a peaceful one?" The monk stopped sweeping. He leaned the broom against the wooden fence and smiled. "Come with me." They walked together through the temple garden. The morning sun had begun to warm the stones beneath their feet. Drops of dew still rested on the blades of grass, sparkling like tiny jewels. Before long, they reached an old persimmon tree. Its branches were heavy with ripe fruit. The monk reached up, picked a single persimmon, and placed it in Thomas's hands. "It is beautiful," Thomas said. "It is. And if I keep holding it, will it stay this way forever?" Thomas looked at the fruit. He smiled. "No, In a few days, it will begin to soften, and after that, it will spoil." The monk nodded. "Exactly." He looked toward the valley below. "Nothing is meant to stay exactly as it is. Not this fruit, not this tree, not this body, not even the happiest days of our lives." Thomas listened quietly. The monk continued. "Suffering often begins when we ask temporary things to give us permanent peace." A breeze stirred the branches above them. One ripe persimmon loosened from its stem, fell gently to the earth, and rolled to a stop beside Thomas's feet. Neither of them reached for it. They simply watched it resting there, for a reason Thomas could not yet explain. That small moment stayed with him, long after the fruit had stopped moving. And somewhere deep inside, another question had already begun to grow. If nothing lasts forever, then where does lasting peace come from? The monk looked at Thomas for a long moment. Then, to Thomas's surprise, he said nothing. Instead, he began walking down a narrow stone path that disappeared into the forest. Thomas followed. Neither of them spoke. The only sound was the gentle rhythm of their footsteps, and the wind moving quietly through the cedar trees. After a few minutes, they arrived at a small wooden bridge crossing a clear mountain stream. The water was so still that every cloud above seemed to be floating beneath their feet. The monk stopped. He pointed toward the stream. "What do you see?" Thomas smiled. "I see water," the monk nodded. "And if I stir it—" He picked up a small branch and gently touched the surface. The reflection disappeared. The clouds broke apart. The blue sky vanished into ripples. "Now, what do you see?" Thomas looked carefully. "Only moving water." The monk laid the branch aside. "Again," he said nothing. Together, they simply stood there. Minute after minute, the ripples slowly faded. The water became clear once more. The clouds returned. The blue sky returned. Even the reflection of Thomas's own face quietly appeared again. The monk smiled. "I did not repair the water. I simply stopped disturbing it." Thomas remained completely still. For reasons he could not explain, those simple words reached somewhere much deeper than all the advice he had received throughout his life. He suddenly remembered something. Not a business meeting, not a promotion, not a number written in a bank account. He remembered sitting beside his young daughter many years ago, watching ducks glide across a quiet lake. Back then, he had owned far less than he did now. Yet he could not remember ever feeling richer. A single tear formed in the corner of his eye. He quickly brushed it away. The monk pretended not to notice. Instead, he quietly continued walking, as though he understood that some answers become clearer only after silence has had enough time to speak. Neither of them spoke as they walked back toward the temple. The forest seemed quieter now, or perhaps it was only Thomas's mind that had grown quieter. When they reached the courtyard, the old monk returned the bamboo broom to its place beside the wooden wall. Then he disappeared into the kitchen. Thomas remained alone. The tea bowl was still resting on the stone table where he had left it. The morning sunlight now reached its smooth clay surface. He picked it up, turned it slowly in his hands. It was surprisingly light. There were small cracks beneath the glaze. The rim had been worn smooth by countless years of use. It was not beautiful because it was perfect. It was beautiful because it had been used. Thomas smiled to himself. He suddenly remembered a bowl that had once belonged to his mother. Every morning before school, she had served him warm oatmeal in that old bowl. When it cracked, she never threw it away. She simply repaired it and kept using it for many more years. As a boy, he had never understood why. Now, standing in the quiet courtyard of a mountain temple, the memory returned with unexpected clarity. The old monk stepped back outside, carrying a small wooden tray. On it rested 2 simple rice cakes. He placed one beside Thomas, the other beside himself. Neither of them touched the food. For a while, they simply watched the steam rising from the tea. Then the monk quietly asked, "When you think about your life, what is the first thing that comes to your mind?" Thomas answered without thinking. "My work," the monk nodded. "And after that?" "My family," the monk smiled. "And after that?" Thomas opened his mouth, then stopped. For the first time, he realized he did not know the answer. The monk reached for his tea, took one quiet sip, then looked toward the mountains. Sometimes, the questions we cannot answer are already leading us toward the answers we need. The wind moved gently through the maple branches. One red leaf drifted down, landing softly inside the empty tea bowl. Neither man reached to remove it. They simply watched it resting there, as though it had always belonged. The afternoon passed quietly. Thomas offered to help sweep the courtyard. The old monk simply handed him the bamboo broom. No instructions, no advice, only a gentle smile. At first, Thomas swept the way he had done everything else throughout his life. Quickly, efficiently, trying to finish. The monk watched for a while. Then he slowly walked to another corner of the courtyard, leaving Thomas alone. The wind continued to carry fresh leaves across the stone path. Every few moments, another leaf would fall. Thomas frowned. No matter how much I sweep, the leaves keep coming back. The old monk looked up at the maple tree. They do. Thomas sighed softly. I could spend all day doing this. And tomorrow, the ground will be covered again. The monk nodded. Yes. For a while, neither of them spoke. Then Thomas quietly laughed. It was the first genuine laugh he had shared in many months. I think I understand. The monk looked at him, but said nothing. Thomas rested both hands on the broom. I have been sweeping my life the same way. I keep believing that one more achievement, one more possession, one more plan will finally leave everything exactly the way I want it. He looked at the leaves scattered across the stones. But life keeps changing. The leaves keep falling. The seasons keep moving. And I keep wondering why I cannot hold everything still. The old monk bent down. He picked up a single maple leaf that had just landed near his feet. He held it gently in his open palm. Then, without a word, he released it. The wind carried it away once more. Thomas watched until it disappeared among the trees. For the first time, he did not wish to chase after it. He simply smiled and quietly picked up the broom again. This time, he was no longer sweeping to finish. He was simply sweeping. The old monk leaned the bamboo broom against the temple wall. For a while, he watched the maple leaves dancing in the afternoon breeze. Then he spoke. When I was very young, my teacher told me a story. Thomas looked up. The monk smiled. It was a story about the Buddha and an old farmer. The farmer came to see the Blessed One after a terrible season. His crops had failed. One of his oxen had wandered away. The rain had come too late, and nothing in his life seemed to be going as he had hoped. The farmer sat before the Buddha and began listing every problem he carried. My fields, my animals, my family, my worries, my fears. When he finally finished, he waited for the Buddha to tell him how to make those problems disappear. The monk paused. A bird landed quietly on the stone lantern nearby. Instead of answering immediately, the Buddha simply asked, "Tell me, has there ever been a season when nothing went wrong?" The farmer thought for a long time. then slowly shook his head. "No, blessed one." The Buddha smiled kindly. "Then perhaps your suffering does not come from the changing seasons. Perhaps it comes from believing they should never change." The old monk became quiet again. Thomas lowered his eyes. The wind carried another handful of leaves across the courtyard. This time, he did not see a mess waiting to be cleaned. He saw autumn, doing exactly what autumn had always done. The next morning, Thomas woke before sunrise. For a few quiet moments, he simply lay there listening. The temple was still asleep. Somewhere in the distance, a stream continued its endless journey through the valley. A bird welcomed the coming light with a single clear note. The air carried the faint scent of cedar and fresh earth after the night's cool mist. Thomas smiled. He could not remember the last time he had awakened without immediately thinking about what needed to be done. There was no meeting waiting for him, no schedule to keep, no problem demanding an answer. Only a new day, arriving exactly as it always had. When he stepped into the courtyard, the old monk was already there, not meditating, not reading, simply pouring hot water into two familiar tea bowls. He looked up, smiled, and quietly motioned for Thomas to sit. Neither of them spoke. The silence between them no longer needed filling. It had become as natural as the morning light. After a while, Thomas looked around the little temple, the stone path, the maple tree, the bamboo broom resting against the wall, the worn wooden gate where he had first arrived. Everything looked exactly the same, yet nothing felt the same. He finally broke the silence. "I thought I came here searching for an answer." The monk nodded gently. "And did you find one?" Thomas looked into his tea. For a long moment, he simply watched the thin curls of steam rise into the cool morning air. Then he smiled. "I think I stopped asking the wrong question." The old monk said nothing. His eyes quietly reflected the same peaceful kindness Thomas had noticed on the very first morning. A soft breeze drifted through the courtyard. One small maple leaf landed beside the empty tea bowl. Neither man reached for it, neither felt the need to. Some things were already exactly where they belonged. The morning sun had climbed above the mountains. Its gentle light spilled across the old stone path, just as it had every morning for countless years. Thomas stood quietly beside the wooden gate. The small travel bag resting on his shoulder did not feel any lighter. Yet somehow, the man carrying it did. The old monk walked beside him. Neither of them seemed eager to say goodbye. There was nothing left that needed explaining, nothing left that needed proving. Only one final cup of tea, shared in silence. After a long while, Thomas bowed deeply. "Thank you, Master." The old monk returned the bow. Then, with a warm smile, he said, "I did very little." Thomas looked at him, puzzled. "You listened." The monk's smile grew softer. "And sometimes, that is enough." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The wind wandered gently through the cedar trees. Somewhere beyond the temple, a bell rang once. Its quiet sound drifted across the valley, then slowly disappeared into the morning air. Thomas turned toward the mountain path. He had imagined this moment many times. He thought he would leave with a great secret, or a profound teaching, or perhaps a single sentence that would change his life forever. Instead, he was leaving with something much quieter. He had learned how to sit without rushing, how to drink tea without thinking about tomorrow, how to watch a leaf fall without wishing it would stay on the branch, and perhaps, for the very first time, he understood that abundance had never meant having more. It meant finally seeing what had been with him all along. Just before Thomas disappeared around the first bend in the mountain path, he stopped, turned back. The old monk was still standing beside the temple gate, one hand resting lightly on the familiar bamboo broom, the other holding the same empty tea bowl. Thomas smiled. The monk smiled back. No words were needed. As Thomas continued down the mountain, the sounds of the temple slowly faded behind him. The bell, the stream, the wind, until all that remained was the quiet rhythm of his own footsteps. Years later, people would often ask Thomas what he had found in that little mountain temple. Some expected him to speak of a hidden meditation. Others imagined an ancient Buddhist secret. Thomas would simply smile, pour them a cup of tea, place the empty bowl gently on the table between them, and after a long, peaceful silence, he would quietly say, "I went there looking for a treasure. I came home able to recognize the one I had always carried. And perhaps, as you prepare to rest tonight, you may discover that the peace you have been searching for has never been as far away as it seemed. Thank you for spending this quiet evening with me. May your heart be gentle with itself. May your mind grow still, and may your sleep be peaceful. Good night, my friend."